You just bring it straight back to me straight away. Thanks for that.
No, I just, I've just asked Victoria how it's going for her, like her situation now. She's had the challenges, with young men in the house.
Mm, Well,
How,
my killer challenge, I was supposed to still be in the States, right? And it seems
Yep.
like a month ago, but today was the day I'm supposed to check into Disney. All right. And that is a kick in the soft parts. That doesn't feel good. Ken's here as well. Hey, Ken. So that doesn't feel good. Me and my wife obviously have very different energies, and there's been a lot put on her in terms of the kids. And I think the biggest thing that's caused kind of stress and contention for us has always been the expectations, and we talked about this with Karen earlier in the week, the expectations that teachers put on you in terms of what they expect you to have learned throughout that time. And Karen was like, don't try and be a teacher, just try and be a parent. But I think most people are starting to adjust to it now. So yeah, I don't know. It's been interesting. It's been like bathing in all the good stuff and all the bad stuff all at the same time.
yeah. I love that you mentioned that. It's so true. And what's the hardest part? I'm going to go back to what you said about Disney. I'd love to know, go deeper into that. But just to reinforce what you're saying hi, we can see you now.
Hello.
I love that. I love your dream catcher in the back.
Oh, thank you.
So Esther Perel actually talks about how the principle of continuity, I think it's called continuity, principle of continuity, where so much is being challenged at the moment, right? So there's really three parts of that model, that principle, where it's our structure, right? The daily tasks, like our structure throughout the day. And then, and in our life, our relationships, like how we relate to others has completely changed too. Like the way we used to, go out for drink or communicate and have deal with our relationships, whether friendships, work relationships, or our romantic relationship and our children relationship is completely different now, where it's challenged. It's definitely challenged. And then our historical, which is our stories. It's the stories that we've told that are based on our religion, on our culture, and our own experiences, right? She was talking about how she grew up with two Holocaust survivors. And one of the conversations that they used to have is, when did they leave Germany, right? When did they leave Germany? Like, when did you get, was it during the warning phase? Was it during the preparing phase? Was it during what's actually happening? And then you also have then the aftermath. Those like the force structure of any kind of pandemic or disaster. And so I love how she goes into that. And it's really what the deepest one, like we a lot of us start talking about the structure, like how do we do this and who takes care of what and what are our roles in, who cooks dinner and who takes care of this and that. And it's like, yes, it can create conflict. And then deeper than that is, and the last level in terms of depth is our historical principles, like what are our deepest rooted values, and then how do we handle that? Are we attached to the continuity? Some people are very attached to let's try and keep it normal as much as possible, right? And others may be dealing with it on a it's different. It's going to be different. This is it. This is a pandemic. Everything's changed. We just got to deal with it. And that's it. So get over it, kind of the energy. And we can see how that can clash. I'm not saying that that's exactly what's happening, but at some levels, we're all dealing with that. And it's how we're communicating, how we're talking about it, and how we're dealing with it that can create either conflict or bring us back, bring us even closer.
Yeah,
just a little something I wanted to share.
I don't agree.
Okay, tell me.
I don't agree I do agree that 99% of people agree with what you just said. And I agree that it's true and right for 99% of people. I just don't think it's right for me. And my reason I said that is I'm going to make this number up because I can't remember it. But I listened to a speaker once on equality say that we share 99.98% of our biological matter and DNA with each other. Like the differences in our DNA between all four of us on this call is 0.02%. 0.02.
Like as a banana too, like in terms of our, like the banana is the same.
We have like an 80% with a banana, yeah. and instead of celebrating the 99.98, we differentiate based on the 0.02%. Okay, that seems pretty crazy. If you offer somebody, do you want to celebrate the 99 points of similarity or the 1 point of difference? If I didn't tell you we're talking about boys, girls, black people, white people, Chinese people, French people, you'd go, well, I'll celebrate the 99. The 1%'s irrelevant. Whereas as soon as I say, yeah, but that person's a person of color, that person's a person with disability, you go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to pigeonhole that person in that way. So my point being, you said everything's changed.
Well, no, some people will see it as,
and I get that,
everything's changed, and some will see it as no, only a few things that are attached to that continuity, and it's how we're handling that.
What's changed that's important? When we, again, and I know we refer to this too much, we really need to not, but we've all been to a Date with Destiny or a UPW type thing. And the Date with Destiny exercise is essentially a big, long exercise to go, what do you want your destiny to be? How are you going to take control of who you are and who you are in your future? And my number one value was self-truth. My number two value was health and personal well-being. And my number three value was being an exemplary role model for my children. None of that's changed. None of that has changed. This external stuff where I go to get food has changed. The type of food I get has changed. My diet has changed. I'm having to work harder to maintain some exercise than I did because the gym was really easy. I could go there, it was 10 minutes away, lift some stuff for 20 minutes, come home. Now I have to use exercise bands, which I don't really like, and I'm having to find new motivation because I like lifting heavy iron because that's how I get motivated. So that's changed. But the reason I reject it is because I choose to reject it because I choose to reject it, because why am I going to focus on that? 100%. If I was to pick up everyone in the world and say, you can't remember what you've lost, this is your world, the people go, okay, cool, I'll work with that. That's what I've got, that's what I've got. But it's just a choice.
100%. And so the way you're dealing with it is, I'm totally agreeing with you, 100%. And the way you're handling any situation, and it's amplified by the current situation, is aligned with your values, what your principle are, right? And then somebody who you're in partnership with or you're in relationship with have their own.
Yeah, Liz is very, yeah, and I see a more common response in Liz than mine. I accept that I'm not the norm, right? Because I was speaking to someone earlier and they said, yeah, there's just a lot of uncertainty in the world. And I went, what is uncertain exactly? Approximately 2% of 4 billion people are going to die. That's not uncertain. It's certain. That is what's going to happen. If you decide to go out to parks and beaches, you're probably going to catch something which has got a 2% chance of killing you. That's also certain. American Airlines, United, Delta, British Airways, Virgin, one of them will not survive this. That is certain. It's not uncertain. Our future, in some ways right now, is more certain than it ever was.
I think it depends, sorry Peter, but I think it depends on from what angle you're coming at. I really do. So from what I'm hearing Jessica saying is that it's like you say, there is a choice of where you come from. But a lot of people, when they talk about uncertainty, they don't look at uncertainty with regards to general. They look at uncertainty from their own lives. They look at uncertainty from, this is how I see it, I feel uncertain. But also we need to remember as well that right now, our egos are playing a huge part in our reality, a huge part. And our egos are trying to survive this whichever way, whether it's saying nothing's changed or loads has changed. And it's about actually transmuting those egos to actually being present and saying, okay, where do we stand right now? So for me, for example, I don't believe anything has changed because I am still me. I still have the same gifts that I have. I can still go and create whatever it is I want. I don't care about Brexit, coronavirus, whatever and stuff. I will stay safe. I will follow all the instructions. It does not hamper my creativity. But there are some people, for example, I was talking to somebody 2 weeks ago, and the statement that came out of their mouth was, if it wasn't for the coronavirus, I would have done X, Y, and Z. And I shut them down straight away. And I was like, no, the coronavirus has no impact whatsoever in what you're going to do. Because if you were going to do it, you would have done it anyway. Mm-hmm. Right? But it just depends on what your reality is. And just by looking at the way a lot of people, and I'm going to say a lot of us, because I don't want to differentiate, but a lot of us are dealing with this pandemic. There's people out there behaving as if nothing's happening. There's another bunch of people who are staying at home. And it's almost as if we're living in a completely separate world to each other. So the ego is playing a huge part in this and stuff. So how you see it, how everybody else sees it, it's going to be different. And it's literally based on how you want to survive this.
And it's,
I have never accepted, sorry, we talked about this slightly yesterday. There's a book called Sapiens. And in it, there's a category, there's a chapter called myths. And what they say is that literally almost everything that you experience in your daily life is a myth. Like money is a myth. We made it up so that we could barter with each other. Religion, I'm not going to go there because I don't want to offend anybody, but the one they use as an example, I stopped myself. I'm learning. Is like they use the concept of Peugeot as a company. It's a myth. It only exists because we say it exists. The actual pieces of equipment exist, the cars exist, but who says that those people own Peugeot? Like, who gets to say that? Well, we only get to say it because we all believe in the myth. Yeah. And because I was never able to work for anyone, because I was too goddamn arrogant and opinionated from the age of 17, I've never bought into any of the myths. I have always fed myself through my output of my own work. I have never, since 17, I have not taken a salary from anyone for anything ever. And I'm still here. Now, there were some days when I wasn't doing particularly good and I had to scramble down the back of a sofa for pennies, I remember it, to put into an electric meter. And I had to go and heat up my instant noodles from Sainsbury's for 4 pence in a shower, because that's the only way I could get hot water. And then when I did them, my dog ate half the noodles and then looked at me expecting me because it was hungry. And I'm like, you just ate half of everything I had, man. You got to at least smile at me. It is what it is. And all of these things, like I was speaking to someone the other day that owns 3 Airbnbs. He's like, I'm really concerned about these Airbnbs because they're going to repossess them. The next 3 months is just so full of uncertainty. There's no uncertainty the next 3 months. No one is going to repossess those 3 Airbnbs because no bank could have the PR of repossessing a house right now. If any single financial institution, before they announced any rules, come and repossess anything that you have, then the world will vilify them. However, in 3 months' time, when we've all stopped talking about this and we're all back to Brexit and Trump is an arsehole and then you're going to have problems. Because that's when people aren't going to be traveling, people will not have the money, people will not come into your Airbnb, and the banks will be able to repossess you. There is a whole host of uncertainty coming in 3 months' time. But right now, as long as you can afford to eat, you're fine.
Well, that's your blueprint. But I can see, and I've spoken to a few people, that it's right now we're on I totally agree with everything that you're saying. And that's your blueprint. And there are people with your blueprint in a relationship with someone who has a different blueprint. When things
Yes, I am one of them.
and that creates tension when in times of stress, in times of also confinement, right? When we're all together in the same space 24/7, it creates added stress, and therefore it's looking with compassion and understanding that people have different blueprints. So I totally agree, and that's your blueprint.
Yeah,
And somebody, and you can be in a relationship with someone who has a similar blueprint, or a very or in a great way. You know, this is heightening any relationship right now. There are people who are going through divorce that are together in the same environment. There are people who just started dating who are now living together. There are people who have been having challenges in their marriage, and this is now creating even more heightened. There are people who are having great relationship, great moments in their relationship, and it's creating even better bliss and a moment to really go deeper and create deeper connections. There are people who have generations, 3 generations in the same home. And the challenges, I was just answering the you know, a lot of people goes like, how do you handle it? How do you handle when a challenge comes up? It's first understanding that we are all handling it through our own blueprint. And our blueprint comes from this principle of continuity and how attached we are. So I think that's what I was trying to say.
And you are totally right. I agree with you. And my answer to, because yeah, Liz's model and mine are different. And Liz will lean slightly more into it. I think she probably spends more time absorbing messages from other people than I do. So her ego is intertwined with Instagram and Facebook and friends and their thoughts and etc. And I've always just been like, you're all morons, so I'm not listening to you anyway.
And actually, what did you say? You are what?
You're all morons, so I'm not going to listen to any of you anyway.
Or you could see it as hunter-gatherer.
No, right? She's excluded from that list. But exactly what you just said. The only way to I think one of the most amazing things about humanity is that you can believe 2 contradictory things at the same time. I think that is one of the coolest things about being us. You can believe one thing and another thing in equal measure that don't sit together. And your brain finds a way to go, yeah, that still works.
Especially gatherers, especially women.
Okay, well, I believe that my model and blueprint is right. I believe that people should be celebrating and focusing on what they have and looking at the things of continuity, because I don't think anything has changed except for your external experiences. However, I still then believe at the same time that other people's models are valid and they're valid for them, and that I should accept that model. And Liz and I managed to coexist without stress, or without too much stress of each other. Obviously, we have our own stresses, because we accept that other person's reality entirely. So when she's, and this all sounds wrong, so I've got to be very careful. When she's going on, no, but I don't want her to hear it and then feel like I've said something that I wouldn't mean. When she's going into a very emotional space, I don't try and enter that space. You know, you talk about the you know, the triad.
Yep.
Of like who is it?
Physiology and
no, there's a relationship triad where you are the
victim, Wuho, which is the one that's not prosecutor. No.
Basically the person that's being hurt, the person that's hurting them, and the person that's facilitating listening to them all and making it real.
Yeah.
And I can't remember that, but it's a really useful thing, because when I spent some time in therapy and I was talking about my relationship with my dad and and then I was talking about Liz and her brother, the therapist just said, well, just don't join in. Just because why are you actually upset? Because all of your upsets, you know, again, in the therapy space, come back to how it makes you feel about you. And that's where, and she said, well, just, can't you give your wife a hug and say, I'm sorry you feel that way, but not involve yourself in the, and like, well, yeah. And when I started doing that, and then people then try and pull you back in, you're like, I'm not going there. It's your thing. If you want to go there, that's totally cool. I'm here to support you, but I'm not getting involved. So when Liz is in that space, the standard response from us or from me is, do you want my boy response or my girl response? It's such a useful. She goes, sometimes she said, I want the girl response. I'm like, well, come on, let's have a hug and talk. How did that make you feel? I'm really sorry you felt that way. Da, da, da. And I just literally put on a hat and pretend to be a girlfriend.
I love that. That's exactly what you should be doing.
Yeah. And then every so often she said, no, I just want the boy response. Can you just go and fix it? I'm like, sure, no problem. Oi, mum, don't say that to my wife. It made her feel bad. Okay, great. Right, what's next, Liz? What can I fix next for you?
I love that.
And I said this is one of the things I said to you the other day on one of the calls, is asking people how they want your help is really important. And it's because it's such a useful tool of, hey, do you want my opinion? No, I don't want your opinion. I just want a hug. Okay, cool, we can do that. Hey, do you want me to take the kids for a couple of hours because it seems like you're at a place of a breaking point? No, I just want you to tell me I'm doing okay. Okay. Or yes, please take these hellions away from me for 2 hours before I kill somebody. Great, I'll do that then. And I think that has been the number one thing that we have used really well, of just asking the other person. There was a couple of nights ago, things hadn't gone right with what we were doing, and I walked in the house and really stressed, and Liz went, what can I do? And I said, can you just give me half an hour and make me a cup of coffee and just leave me be? I just want to go into the lounge, play on an Xbox, and forget the world exists for 30 minutes. So yeah, sure, cool, right, awesome.
Oh, can I just stop for 1 second? I want to just recognize you and Liz on how incredible you guys are together, and how an incredible man and husband you are, to understand that the way she's handling things and the way she is different, right? Is different, and you value and love her so much that you are giving to her what she needs, and vice versa. She's asking you what you need and giving you what you need. And it's so against our human instinct. We talk about ego. I talk about instinct and about human spirit. Alison Armstrong talks about that a lot when she talks about our hunter and gathering, and so feminine, masculine kind of energy. But hunter gathering, I think, because we all have it. As a woman, I have both hunting and gathering. As a man, you have both hunting and gathering. There are just one that's more natural. In your relationship, you're clearly the hunter and she's the gatherer, even though you both have it inside of you. Like, you can say, like, what do you want me to do? You want me to be the girl right now? Okay, give me a hug, like, come here, you're doing okay, it's gonna be fine, I love you, I believe in you, I'm here for you, I'll provide, protect, and I'm gonna be here for you. So it's beautiful. And not everybody has that. I feel like you're such a beautiful example of it, Peter, and thank you so much for sharing it, because you're like literally the example, the manifestation of what the teachings are. It's, as a woman, a lot of time when a man comes home, the way you're saying, work's not going well. Some men have lost their jobs. A lot of people are getting, like, laid off. And the way a hunter handles it is very different. And for a woman, for a gatherer, our instinct, right? Our ego, our instinct is to go, don't worry, it wasn't that important anyway, we'll figure it out. Oh, no bueno. Come to you, Peter, and go, it's okay, you'll do another project, or don't worry about it, trying to like it's like literally saying, you're not good enough anyways, you should forget about it.
Yep, the idea wasn't worthwhile, you're a piece of shit.
You're a piece of shit. And our intention as a because that's what we do between us. We think you need what we need, right? We think we know what you need because it's the same as what we need. So we're going to be saying that because that's what we would say to another gatherer to make her feel better, because we want to get off this stress. Hunting, our instinct is to, and our human instinct behavior, our reptilian brain is to avoid the tension and go away from the tension. So it will be like, however, for a man, and tell me if this is wrong, the way she handled it was perfect, is saying, oh my goodness, thank you so much for being that type of man who care so much and who's fighting for our family. Thank you so much for having done all these amazing things for us. I know you're going to figure it out. What do you need? And just say like, okay, you need some time. And that's how men do it. Ladies on the call and who are listening to this recording, when your man comes home and is stressful and you just tell him that and give him space, it also means that when he is not like Peter, maybe, and who hasn't really learned all this stuff or instinctively like noticed that that's what we're supposed to be doing because we're opposites, he will leave you alone when you're feeling stressed. And we will start telling ourselves, he doesn't love me, he doesn't care about me, right? Because he's doing what he needs when he's stressed. And it's hilarious because we need the opposite. We need like, honey, don't worry. It wasn't that important anyway. If you didn't go to the groceries and get the avocados because they didn't have any, they ran out. We don't need them. We'll eat a salad instead. That's what we want to hear, right?
But let's take it out of romance for a second, right? Because I think one of the things that people do so wrong is they judge people's actions, not their intents, right? Like, I had a conversation with my mum a couple of days ago, and she's describing this thing with another friend of hers. And I said, do you want my opinion? And she went, sure. And I went, you're not as important as you think you are. None of us are to other people. With all the love in the world, what we truly care about is ourselves. That is where our experiences start, and everything from that is an extrapolation. I mean, your friend, and it was a friend of hers that's transitioning from being, in one job to being in something totally different. Like, she was scared, and she had a fight with you, and instead of choosing not to fight with her, you made it about you, and you're now telling me all this stuff from someone that you've been a lifelong friend for 30 years. And she went, well, what should I do? I'm saying, reach out to her and apologize for whatever it is that caused her pain that you said wrong, and say, but this isn't like us. I must have misunderstood something. Please help me understand where you're at, because this does not make sense. And if people judge people on their intent, not their actions, you have a whole different experience of life. And I'm going to use, Jessica, if you don't mind, an example from you and I. Right? A couple of months ago, we agreed we we're going to do something. You then said, yes, I'll get that done by this time. And you disappeared. And I had people ask me at my end, what's going on? What's she doing? Da, da, da. She said to do this. She said to do that. I'm like, that isn't the person I know. If I look at the intent, not the act, if I judged that based on the action, you and I would not be talking to each other, because I'd be like, she let me down, not interested, away. But instead, I looked at the intent and I went, okay, what's going on that led to this new thing that I'm not expecting? And my response was to reach out to you and say, hey, can you explain what's going on? Can I help? Da, da, da. And then we got on a conversation. Then you explained what was blocking you. Then we unblocked it, and away we go. I think if people start looking at people's intent, if you know that someone that you know is pure and good and is a virtuous person, whatever the right adjective is, because my vocab isn't good enough, then ask them why they got it wrong. If your partner screws up and says all that stuff that we just said, like the guy comes home and you say, don't worry, it's okay. Recognize the intent, not the action. Recognize that the intent was for her, as somebody that loves you and cares for you, to try and help. If the way they help is wrong, it's okay. That doesn't matter. That isn't what you should look at. What you should look at is somebody was willing to give you 3 minutes of their life that they will never get back. They could have done something far more selfish. They could have gone and done something for them. If you ask someone, what would you like to do in the next 5 minutes? Very few people say, I'd like to console somebody. I'd like to go and have a drink. I'd like to go and sit on the beach. I'd like to do this. I'd like to do that. Top of your list is not, I'd like to care for my partner whilst they're being weak in an area that I think they should be able to do. That's not on the list. So if you look at the intent, then you get the ability to say, honey, that doesn't work for me. And they go, sorry? Like, if you were giving me that and I said, what you're doing, that doesn't work for me. You're just making me angry. That's not what I was looking for. And then most people in my experience go, well, what were you looking for? And Liz, if I do that with Liz, and I'd say, well, I just need you to tell me to man up and go and make it happen. And she'll literally just like shrug and go, Pete, man up and go and make it happen. I'll go, okay.
I love that. And you're Peter, what you're describing exactly is going from human instinct, ego, and just instinct to spirit. It's true.
Right.
It's when you're now aware. But a lot of people aren't aware yet. Right?
Exactly.
And they feel shitty, and then they react.
Yeah.
Right. We react, and I do it. I mean, we all do it. You have an incredible intuitive way of and self mastery of being able to be in your human spirit. That's beautiful, 100%. And going into, you know, it's a conscious choice to, instead of getting angry at the action, is going into what is the intent. That is a choice that you make into go into spirit self, into going into your higher self, what we can call, whatever you want to call it. It's a choice that you're consciously making, and we all have that choice. And I believe before being able to have that choice, we need to be aware that we are in our human instinct.
I agree. That came to me from school, actually. I remember when you said intuitive, it didn't ring true. And I was thinking about it, and it came back to when I was about 13, 14. One of my goals was to be a professional rugby player. So I was training a lot, both in terms of gym time and in terms of pitch time, like 4 or 5 hours a day. Like, I was always this big. This is not like now. This is, and I wasn't fat. I was just big. And someone said something to me, and I punched him. It was really offensive. Right? In my opinion, he still deserved it. I'm not going to repeat it, but it was about my mum. And I was like, sorry. And I just went, what? And I shattered his jaw, took 6 teeth out of his mouth, dislocated his jaw. He had to get it rewired. And I was devastated. I was like, that is not what I wanted. Do I agree that something should have happened to him for what he said to me? Yes. Is what I'm now seeing, that this guy is having surgery to reconstruct part of his face, a reasonable response to him saying that about my mum? Hell no. And I ended up, I wouldn't say third, but a lot of counseling about never react, always act. Always take 10 seconds between your point of reaction, give yourself a breath, think about it. And if you still think it, go and do whatever it is you were going to do. But give yourself the 10 seconds to react. I used to write emails, responses to clients, to myself, where I'd go, what kind of insert blank here do you think you are? You're unreasonable, insert blank here. I used to send them to me because I wanted to write them, but I knew it didn't serve the greater purpose of what I was trying to do. I have people that work for me that I have to feed, that I have to put roofs over their head, etc., etc., etc. So I think that time to stop your reactions, which are almost always wrong. Right? Anytime you're in reactionary mode, when you look back on it, very rarely do you go, that's exactly how I wanted to handle that situation. Go me. Again, last night, we said this on one of the early calls with Liz yesterday, or the night before. We were joking about, we saw a screensaver come up. She started talking about her experience of the second birth of her child with Sam, and that I'd gone to bed early. And the reason I went to bed early was because if it was a long labor like our first child, I wanted to have the energy to support her through it. And her mum was there, so there's nothing I can actually do in the beginning of labor. It's ridiculously uncomfortable. It's not a nice time, but apart from someone to stroke your back and say they're there, there's kind of nothing else. That's kind of what it is. So I went, right, one of my defaults, like you said the other day, one of my defaults is just go to bed. If I can't do anything about a situation, I'm just gonna go to sleep. Because,
that's what I do.
Yeah, I know that I'll be better for some sleep. It's a tick, and it stops my brain going. And I said to her 2 nights ago, I said, yeah, I went to bed so I could do that. And to be honest, you were being a total bitch. And normally that sense of humor works really well in my house, right? That's normally where we are with each other. We use very extreme lines. We have a very macabre sense of humor around death. We will joke about people dying that are friends of ours. It's just, we have a very dark sense of humor. And I saw her face, and her face changed, and I'm like, shit. And she had the presence to say, I know that's how we normally talk to each other, but that really upset me. And I'm like, wow, okay. And instead of my reaction was to go, don't be fucking silly, and just go straight back on the offense to justify what I'd done as being okay, because in our house it is okay. And she was overreacting. And I looked at it and went, no, that's not cool. And I gave myself a second. I went, you know what? I'm really sorry you took it away from that. Was not my intention. You know, that's normally how we joke. And I recognize this is a whole different situation. And I should have been more sensitive. Of course, I didn't mean that. And of course, that wasn't the reason. I just wanted to support you. And it was just a flippant comment. I'm really, really sorry. To which she goes, that's okay. I'm like, can I give you a hug? Because I really didn't mean that. I don't want you to take that away from it. And I don't want to degrade anything in your memory of what you did for me on that day, because I love my son. I love you. Everything's cool. I'm just an inconsiderate dick. And it's done and it's finished. Whereas when I said at the beginning of our relationship, we talked about getting a dog, and I said, what if we get the dog and I leave you? Go me, look at this. You talk about like the relationship of great, let's support him. I said the sentence to my fiance, what if we get a dog and I leave you? And when her face changed, instead of going, that was a really silly thing to say, I said, well, it's just a fact we have to consider. And I just totally went on the offense trying to justify this ridiculous line, which means that I still hear that line roughly once every 2 weeks.
Oh.
For 5 years, I'm still hearing, well, won't we get a dog and leave you? I'm like, oh, I should have handled that one differently 5 years ago. Shit.
I know, right? Like,
Yeah.
to take that 10 seconds. Hey, Marty.
Speak of a dog.
Yeah, I think so. I think expressing how you want to be supported, as well as being aware of how other people want to be supported, recognize people for their intent, not their actions. And give yourself 10 seconds to think about what it is you're trying to achieve. Like, listening to people argue that love each other is so painful. Like, I so often want to stop. We have a rule in our house that was developed in a very early argument of either of us can call a timeout. The timeout is exactly 5 minutes, not 4 or 6 or 10. So the other person knows how long it's going to last. And whoever calls the timeout has to be the person that reapproaches the argument. So at any point in time, if me and Liz are arguing, either of us can go, no, this is crazy. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And you have to let the other person leave. And it came about because as a guy, I am used to being slightly more physical, and it was a really early argument, and I felt my fist clenching in my pocket. And I was like, why is my body getting prepared literally for violence? I'm literally going like this, and I'm like, fuck. And I'm looking at someone that I love more than any other person in the entire world, that I would literally walk across glass for. And I'm getting to a stage where my body is going onto like an aggressive mode. Like, this is crazy. I need 5 minutes to remind myself of our relationship, of who we are, of how much we love each other, so I can re-engage in the subject of the argument, which is still valid. I still disagree on X, Y, Z, and she still thinks A, B, C. That's worthy of a conversation. So yeah, this timeout rule has saved us from like these huge blowouts that you see people having.
And I love that. I love that 5 minute breakout. And when you're saying, it sounds like you're making yourself wrong for having that reaction. And what I'm going to say again, from your perspective, like when we're going into spirit, saying there's always good intent. And in a way there is. Our instinct is, in our DNA and our, the years and years of back, like at the end of the day, it's, I'm going to die. That is why our body reacts that way, because instinctually we think we're going to die. Therefore, that's how our body reacts. And so we either go into fight or flight. We start a big argument, and something that was so little can blow up to a huge thing, because in our bodies and our innocence, right, in our instinct selves, it's, if this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then I'm gonna die. So you thought you were gonna die. So that's why you went into like, Hulk came out, because you need to survive. It's our instinct. And it's so beautiful that you're taking the choice, and we all have that. We all have our spirit selves to say 5 minute timeout. So I love that. I'm totally stealing that one.
And some people have like took it from me and gone, and like they've ignored some of the distinctions, like 4 minutes, 10 minutes. No, 5 minutes. 5 minutes is enough to calm down and remember what it is you're actually talking about. You have to be the person that comes back. It's so unfair of you if you walk away from something, the other person can't be made to follow you. That's not fair. And the reason
for her, like, do you feel that for Liz, it's easy for her to call a timeout and come back after 5 minutes?
No, I'm talking on her behalf. I'd say no, it's less easy for her, but the end outcome is always better for us. Because as soon as you start using words like you versus it, like you've already lost, right? It's the battle versus war thing of in business, I have been deployed and paid to crush people. I have been deployed to go and negotiate and get us the best deal and go and do that. And I'm like, fine. If they're on the field of play, like, you know, when you hear these people do like the scams where they say you've won the lottery, send $100 to this number and you'll get $1 million, or some Nigerian prince. On, like, if you send that to somebody that's 35 years old on 60K a year and they fall for it, I think you deserve the money. I really don't mind. If any one of the four of us on this call opens an email link that says you have a long lost relative and they've left you $100 million, please send $10,000, you're dumb. And you deserve to lose the $10,000 and they deserve to get it. But as soon as you send it to somebody that is mentally unwell, somebody that is elderly, somebody that is young, then I have a very different view of that action. So I don't know why I said that, but it always appeals to me. It's like, if somebody is on the field of play, if you're there to have a combat with somebody, whether it's a physical sport or in business, then go to war, do what you want to do. But when you come home, is that mode the right mode? You shouldn't ever be trying to win. Why do you want to win? Because if you win, what you're saying is the other person lost. That's what happens in win-lose scenarios. That's what happens in capitalism. Every winner has a loser. And like in your relationship, how can you say the sentence, I love this person unconditionally, and I want them to lose? How can you ever put those two things together?
How about, instead of coming from that perspective, coming from so I can see that happening as a woman in I don't feel safe, therefore I need to control, therefore I withhold love in order to get what I want, I manipulate, I do this and do that in order to feel safe and in order to not die.
But then what you're saying is, I'm happy for the other person to feel the feelings that would come about from those actions.
It means I'm in survival. Yeah, I'm not in my spirit self.
But if you acknowledge in advance you're not happy with that, then you need to find another approach.
You need to recognize it first. Yeah. So
I agree. You have to recognize it first. And I'm just talking from my lens as definitely a male. And go, I never want the people I love to be hurt. So I can't progress on a conversation with anyone on this call, or my wife or my kids, on I want to win. Because if I'm winning, you're losing. So instead, I need to go, so hang on a second, let's boil this back. Where is it we disagree? What is the actual subject we disagree on? Liz and I's biggest argument, like, one of those couple arguments that go on for a week, where you have a little bit in the car and then you stop and you have another little bit there, and it just carries on and on and on, was about whether we wanted our daughter to go to a private school or to go to a state school. And it got resolved in 10 minutes when I think it was Liz, not me, turned around and said, no, okay, this is crazy. What do we agree on? We both love our daughter, true or false? Absolutely. The reason that we're having this argument is because we're both passionate about the fact we love our daughter, true or false? True. Okay, well, that's a pretty good place to start a conversation. We both agree that the most important thing is the love we have for our child. Okay, so where we actually only disagree is this one facet of that, of whether a private school or a public school is better for her development. That's actually all we're talking about. And throughout the week, it had become about my experiences at my school, her experiences at her school. You don't understand me because of this. I don't understand you because of that. It just became this whole mess of, I don't even care about that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this. And as soon as we established that, we were able to literally kind of do a pros and cons for the actual situation at hand. And again, one of Liz's phrases, which I love, and she taught me this very early on in our relationship, is there's always an option C. If you're faced with an A-B choice, you haven't been creative enough. There is another option. If it's do this or do this, no, there's always another option. There's always another option. You just got to go and find it. And in this case, the option became, Liz said, well, how about she goes to the state school for the first term? And if at the end of the first term you still disagree, we'll go and look at private schools. I'm no longer asking, she was like, I'm no longer asking you to make a choice between private school and state school. I'm now asking you just to make a choice to try my way for a couple of months. And if you don't agree, then fine, we'll go and look at a private school. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And she's like, well, no, yeah, that's fine. As long as I'm locked into it, then cool. Let's see what happens with it. It was that simple. As soon as we kind of got back to that core truth.
What happened after one term?
I was totally wrong. She stayed at the state school and it's great for her.
Can I just say, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just say, so Pete, listening to how you and Liz run things and stuff, that's coming from a place where either one of you or both of you has done a lot of work and it has trickled into the family home where you're both at a point where you can actually look at things very objectively and actually connect to your higher selves when actually making decisions. One of the things I was going to say earlier on is everybody has a different pattern. Everybody has a different pattern for survival. And there are ways to actually manage those patterns. Not everybody has been taught how to manage those patterns. You can be taught how to exit the patterns temporarily, but 9 times out of 10 you go back to the patterns because that's almost like your that's your drive. That's your in a technical form. That's your download, right? From the moment you were born to around the age of maybe 3 or whatever, you create a belief system. And if we look around us, not everybody has that learning. And this is where you get a lot of unconscious decisions being made, a lot of unconscious behaviors, because you get married. I've never been married, so I'm talking about clients that I've worked with. But you get people who get married because they fall in love. But if you listen to the old aunts and to the old uncle and to the mum and stuff and their experiences, and they're always going to give you advice and everything else, people go into this, yes, in a union, but also to survive. And it shouldn't be like that. So the mentality of, oh, I need to win, doesn't come from any lack of respect or wanting the other person to fail. It's more like, I need to survive this. I need to go out there. So my idea of winning is being right. I need to be right to be able to make this work. And what tends to happen is it doesn't work out, which is why we have so many divorces now. That's why we have so many misaligned couples and people, people staying together because they have to rather than because they want to. And we need to acknowledge, and I think this is a great conversation and also a great forum to actually have this conversation, is we need to acknowledge that people need to be taught that. So we need to go a lot deeper than this is what we should do. One of my teachers used to say, you can't just go for coffee and then get pregnant. Something in between happens, right? So you go for coffee and then other stuff happens, then you get pregnant. It's never, oh, we went for coffee, then I got pregnant. And it's more about, yes, people are going to be tuning into this, but we also need to allow for people to be taught how to connect to their higher selves when in relationships. And it's not just about romantic relationships, it's about relationships in general. Because my pattern, when I go through my pattern, I look like a narcissist and stuff because that's my survival. And what I have learned, I'm a bit like you, Pete, when I actually write emails, I actually have to write them to myself because the first version is harsh, you know, because it's literally fuck you, I'm right.
And it's actually beautiful.
You're wrong.
To actually write those emails. My dad would tell me that I was raised in that with that thought too. My dad, he would write it and save it as a draft, and then he would read it the next morning after sleeping. So after his reset, and he would read it and see if he still wants to send it.
Right.
Or he would have my mom read it first.
Right.
If it was urgent, because sometimes you do need to answer right away. He would have my mom read it. She would be at a different space, and she also has a different energy, and she would be so lovingly like shifting it. So yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
That you're conscious, but you're saying you have that consciousness.
I've learned how to. I've learned a number of techniques, and I've made it work for me, and that's one of them. One of my other defaults, again, very similar to Pete, surprising that we're friends, is that when it's too much, I go to sleep. I go to sleep because that's my exit strategy to come back and think about it clearly, because I need to put a pause on. It doesn't always work because I'll sleep and then have dreams, but my logical side goes, I need to sleep. Not my higher self.
I have to tell you something funny about the sleep thing, because this is Liz's first interaction with the I sleep thing. Is she was driving to see my mum because I was working, and Liz very, very kindly, and yeah, they get on well. So she went to see my mum, and my mum lives about an hour and 45 minutes away. And Liz had a 2-wheel blowout while she was driving. And she called me, and she was 30 minutes away from my mum and an hour and 15 minutes away from me. And she called me and said, I had to go. So I'm like, are you okay? She said, everything okay? She said, yeah. I'm like, your mum's going to come and pick me up and wait with me whilst I wait for the tow truck. Everything's fine. I'm like, okay. I'm like, should I come anyway? She's like, no, there's literally no point. By the time you get here, we'll have already left. I'm like, okay. So I went to bed. I went to sleep because I was scared witless, because my pregnant wife had just had literally 2-car wheel blowout and just pulled onto the side of the road. I was worried about the child. I was worried about the pregnancy. I was like, there is nothing I can do. There is literally nothing I can do. I trust my mum implicitly. I know that she'll be there as soon as she can. I know that she'll look after her. I know that she's not going to be stuck on the roadside for, So I went to bed. And when Liz got home, 6-7 hours later, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm sleeping. She's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, but what was I supposed to do? I like try this. And I think she's kind of used to it now, but she's like, I still don't really get it. I'm like, there's nothing I can do. And if there's nothing I can do, I literally will put myself in the best state to handle whatever comes from it. And when you came home, you needed me to be awake, supportive, ready to embrace you, to broach the subject of, do we need to get the pregnancy checked in the most gentle way possible? Like, how do you say to somebody that's pregnant, do we need to talk to a doctor to make sure everything's, I mean, that's not a nice thing to have to say. So you want to deliver that right and make sure you're ready. But yeah, it took a long time to get it. But yeah, it was really funny. The biggest experience I've had with relationships, and when you said, you obviously done a lot of work, I think one of the things that is part of that is just age. Liz and I met when we were in our mid-30s. We already knew who we were, what we wanted from life, what our values were. Liz wanted to be a stay-at-home mum. That's what she wanted to do. That was already discussed and agreed. There was no thing. And the biggest thing we had, Victoria, you're probably aware of this, but Jessica, you're probably not. In the UK, we have something called the NCT. So when people become pregnant, you have to go on a course. You can either go on a course from the government with the NHS, or you can pay privately, and it's about £200, so about $250 current exchange rates, and you can go on this NCT course instead. We went to the NHS one, and there's literally like 3 generations of 16-year-old, 32-year-old, 48-year-old outside drinking energy drinks, smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, this is not where I want to be. I'm not doing this. Thanks very much. If the beginning of your pregnancy is Monster Energy and cigarettes, you're probably, that's not my environment. So we went to this NCT, which is private. So you get a slightly different class of person. I'm not trying to be derogatory to anyone, but you go up a couple of notches and you get a different set of people. Now, NCT groups are arranged by when you're going to give birth, when you're due. Not by how old you are, not by your experiences. So it's everybody is lined up so that you're going to give birth in the same kind of month period. So you're going through the same kind of experiences, the same growth, the same challenges. And looking at like the 22-year-olds in that audience, I was like, holy crap, how are you guys going to have a child? I mean, this is ridiculous. This is insane. Like they hadn't, like when Liz and I became pregnant, we were very clear on like that Liz would be doing most of the nighttime wake ups because I was working. She was staying at home to look after the children, or the child. So if they woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, because she was breastfeeding, not bottle feeding, she would do the wake up, not me, and I would sleep so I could then go to work and earn money. Like, to me, and I'm not saying that's right, I'm just saying that's our approach, that's how we agreed it. There were couples that 9 months that hadn't agreed or discussed that when they had the child. Like, how is this going to work? Like, you guys are about to go through one of the biggest transformative processes of your life. And again, we talk about, like, you know, there's so many things uncertain. No, it's not. You're going to have a child in 8 months. It's going to scream, cry, require feeding, and require changing. That's pretty much how it goes. Every new child is basically a pipe. You put stuff in one side, it comes out the other side. That's about it. And when you've got comfortable with that, it's going to change. that's what it is. And they hadn't even agreed those very, very basics of what role am I playing as a dad? What role are you playing as a mum? How are we going to support each other? And I found it quite scary. So Victoria, I think, yes, a lot of the work I've done on myself has helped this, but also it's being very conscious of oneself and one's capabilities and one's abilities. But also I think age is such a big thing inside that. Like, that my 20-year-old self was unmarriable. I was a total dick. I didn't care about the other person in the relationship. I was there for what I could get out of it. That's the truth of it.
So when you say from an age perspective, I get that. Listen, you get your calling when you get your calling. I don't believe that it's age related. So in your case, yes. In my case, yes. But I still know people who are our age who are still as unconscious and have no idea how that's going to work out.
I think
and you have 20-year-olds who are. I think a lot of the time it's also, again, going into, I keep like repeating myself, but it's being in that instinct versus spirit. And you can have, and that's why this is so important, having these calls and getting so many people to join these calls, because you will have somebody that will be teaching me something, teaching us something, and then vice versa, where, you know, you could have somebody that's got the best intention and they just don't know. They don't know that they need to think about who's going to be waking up in the middle of the night, because nobody's actually ever mentioned it to them. And they're like, light bulb moment. Oh, it's like it's a dark room, and every day we keep moving, and it's just it's some parts I illuminated, and some parts are still dark, and it's just infinite. And there's an infini. It's an infinite amount. Is that what you said? Yeah. An infinite amount of things that we can learn in different subjects. There are things that I am totally clueless in certain topics. Right. And there are things that I know a lot because I learned and I educated myself and I went forward and I wanted to be in that spirit self. So I
Right.
feel like this is so valuable, and there are tools, there are simple processes that can be shared on here, on the chat. So if you're listening to this recording, if you have a bunch of questions that keep popping up and have comments that you want to be, sharing, please share on the chat on Rock or wherever we're chatting, and start the conversation, because I think that that's where it starts. It's just having an opening to start the conversation and having people that can support each other. And that's why I love
Yeah.
the Hack Mankind group, Peter.
Yeah.
Thank you so
It's
much
an
for creating it.
Right. Well done,
Yeah.
Pete. Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
this is V1. V2 is going to be even better. But I think what I find so amazing about people like you, Jessica, and it's the reason I reached out to you and everybody else, is like I walked out of relationship day at Date with Destiny because I'm like, the other days, and I said to my instructor, I'm like, the other day, I'm getting true value from the other days, but for those of you who know me, I have quite a few sleep problems, and the Date with Destiny schedule is ridiculous. I'm like, I would much rather go and get a full night's sleep, so I'm here for the final day, for the I think it's the 2 last days, the last day where we're actually doing the thing that we came to do. I want to be awake for that. And the relationship stuff, I'm not perfect, but I get it. And there's other things that, like when Karen the other day was telling us that, if they did this study on children after have watched coverage of 9/11, and children that watch coverage after
Right.
9/11, when you ask them how many planes crashed, went hundreds. They didn't have the ability to conceive that it was one event just replayed. I was like, wow, that is huge. I never even thought of that.
That was huge.
And then it was massive, wasn't it? It's like, wow,
Yeah.
I regard myself as a pretty smart guy, and I never thought about that. And then the other one she said was, when we're talking about how you cope with your children and the subject of death, is answer their questions specifically. Don't go on a big monologue. Right? Ask them, what is it you want to know, and then answer that question. Otherwise, you're going to tell them things that they didn't want to know, and you're going to scare them, and then they're going to have more questions. And that I found very useful. So what I was alluding to there was, if somebody, I've often said, I'm a great leader, an okay mentor, and a terrible teacher. Because if someone says to me, how do you do this in your relationship? If you model me, it can work. Right? If you introduce like the 5-minute timeout, for example, it's a really useful tool. But when people then say, well, can you teach me that? I go, I don't know what you're talking about. I just do it. And in almost every aspect of my life, business, wherever I am, if someone says, can you teach me that? I'm like, no, I don't know how to teach you how to do digital marketing. I don't know how to teach you how to do email marketing. I don't know how to teach you how to do a drip email sequence. I don't know how to teach you how to motivate staff. I don't know how to teach you how to fire staff. But if you sit and watch me for 5 minutes and do it, it seems to work. Right? Whereas people like yourself, people like Karen, people like Clint, people like Ed have the ability to teach things that they know. And that to me is such an amazing skill that I genuinely don't have. If you sit with me and say, can you teach me this? I go, no, I can't. I don't know what you don't know, so I don't know. And then I just deliver it at such a high level, people go, I didn't get anything you said. Or I dumb it down to people where people say, you're just mansplaining everything to me. I'm like, So I think the ability to teach is such a valuable skill or talent. I'm not sure which one it is. That's an interesting question. Is teaching a skill or a talent? That's a really interesting question in itself. That I become quite jealous of that. In a positive way, but I'm like, wow, that's something I wish I could work on. And then I start working and go, I don't want to do this. So maybe I don't. But yeah, I think that's the most amazing thing about Jessica and all of you guys, is the ability to teach this stuff versus just model this stuff. These calls are great for modeling. These calls are great for taking away and go, oh, okay, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. But then how do you transform and translate that into tools that people can like do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4? That's a different skill.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love what you said about, he's like, I wanted to do that, but then I kind of don't want to do that. And that's so amazing at what you do, Peter. I think no one could have, I mean, I'm sure other people can, but I can't believe what you've actually accomplished in the past 10 days. It's just incredible. The people you're an amazing leader. I would never be able to. I mean, I don't even want to. That's the thing. Like, I mean, I'd like to know, but I don't want to do it.
The thing that's going to worry me in the next 24, 48 hours is how many people go through the pivot with me, because one of the things I do preach about on a regular basis is understanding what you're delivering and how you deliver it are not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're still sticking to what you're doing, like the outcome you're looking for, it doesn't matter how you deliver it. It really doesn't matter. And we're going to see that over the next 3 months with everybody. If they successfully transfer from I'm a personal trainer in a gym to I'm now a personal trainer remotely, like I'm doing a webinar this week on telemedicine. And to me, that's like such a great example of medicine can be delivered remotely. And that's just breaking that whole pattern. So it's going to raise a whole set of questions that people are going to get fixated on the how. How do I do that? No, that's not important. The how is important. How will come. What's important is why are you doing it? Are you still delivering a superlative level of healthcare? Yes or no? Yes, then great. The how will work itself out. That's literally employ somebody with a skill set and pay them to give you the how.
Mm-hmm.
That's all the how is almost always about, is literally, well, I'm going to do it online. Great, I'll go and hire someone to do it for me. It's the why that matters. And the leadership, and thank you for saying everything you said, but the truth of the matter is the V1 of Hack Mankind did not work. And it didn't work because I made a couple of errors. And my other tattoo, which was booked in to happen now, but I can't do it. So that one says, I will find a way or make one. And that one will say, iterate without ego or emotion. Take the reason you're doing for it, keep that intact, look at what you did. And if it didn't give you that result, then change it and go, okay, that didn't work. And be willing to be critical of where you went wrong. I went wrong here, 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 and here. And I guess I have a massive ego and I'm totally egoless. I'm willing to critique myself and say, you screwed up that, and that. And it's amazing when you say that to people, right? Because they defend you for you. It's such an instinct. If I say, I'm misunderstood how well people could acclimatize to Rocket Chat, that was a failing in my thought process. People automatically go, no, it's not that. It's a new concept. They defend it for you. It's like, shut up. Yeah. Just stop it. We don't need to pacify me. I screwed that up. The right response to I screwed that up is how do I now do it better? That's the right response. It's not to get all woe is me and I'm stupid or I'm a failure or that. No. But stop all that certain bottom level stuff and just end at, okay, I screwed that up. How do I fix it? How do I do better? How do I grow into the position I want to be in? And if you apply that to relationships as well, it's just a very powerful way to be. Of go, well, I screwed that up. Okay, well, how do I do it better? How do I, whether it's the next relationship or the next iteration of a conversation, or whether that's romantic or personal or friends or family or mothers, fathers, brothers, it doesn't matter. Just be willing to critique yourself.
Yes. And what I love about that example, when you turn it into a relationship, it's understanding like a lot of times people, especially in today's generation or today's world of, it's everything's consumable. It's all like discardable. It's all, I don't know what do you call those things? Like paper cups, paper plates.
Disposable.
It's disposable. In a word of disposableness, we feel sometimes when things don't go right in the relationship, or I screwed up or something like that, it's a lot easier to discard it and start a new one, when a lot of times it's just going to show up again. The challenges are going to show up again. It's going to show up even stronger. So sometimes it's like maybe it's better to have a glass cup and a glass plate and wash it and take care of it and really nurture it and understand and say, you know what, I did screw up. How can we fix this?
We've all lived, I think all of us have lived abroad or been experiencing it. And I used to love when I was more aggressive, sitting down with someone and say, so who are you running towards or who are you running away from?
Mm.
And they're like, sorry? No, I just felt like a change. No, you didn't. Your underlying thing was that you wanted to visit a new country. Sure, I get that. But there was a catalyst, there was a moment when you went, I'm booking a flight. Tell me about the 20 seconds before that, because I guarantee it involves either you failing at something that you couldn't reconcile, or somebody else saying something that you didn't want to hear, or you saying something you didn't want to hear. In almost every single instance where somebody moves country, it's a relationship that went wrong, a job that they loved that went sour, and it's like, that's all cool. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't move, but you really should work on that thing too, because when you go home, it will still be there. Like the horrible statistic of, and this is a really touchy subject, so I don't want to put this in a way. I was talking this through this the other day, of like women that in abusive relationships that have been in 4 or 5 abusive relationships. Like, what is it that you are doing or attracting that has led you to be in that? Now, if you're in it once, my heart goes out to you. It's horrible. Let's string a guy up, whatever we want to talk about. But after the 4th time, you've got to do some personal work there and go, how am I in this situation again? What is it that I'm doing to bring out or attract that type of person?
Or be attracted to. And again, it goes
or be
back
attracted to. And I said, I don't want to diminish anything that anyone goes through in that area. That is not my intent. I'm not saying that they are the perpetrator. They're still the victim. I should go that saying, but it doesn't nowadays. But even in that most extreme example, you can still look at yourself and go and be critical of yourself. You know, critical analysis and critical thought was invented by the Greeks thousands of years ago. And yet we have now taken it to be a bad word. It's not, it's dictionary definition. Being critical is not an emotional thing. Just be critical. Just look at it and go, what could I have done better? What did I do right? What did I do wrong? Like, what do I want to continue? What don't I want to continue? Like, I have never made the mistake of saying, you know, what if we get a puppy and I leave you? I've never done that again. Because in my head, it was a perfectly logical question. I wasn't being emotional.
Interesting in what you're saying is, as a man, it's or as a hunter, that's something that a lot of hunters don't go into. As a gatherer, we go into it too much. So it's really interesting. We get addicted to the fear, to being that critical. We self-criticize so much, especially around our bodies, about what we've done. Are we loved? Are we enough? All of that amazing stuff. Our instinct self as a woman, we are so self-critical. It's insane. And they're such beautiful, it's like, at the end of the day, you do want to just be conscious that you have a choice, whether it's somebody who's never critical, who never actually puts themselves into questioning and who never really reanalyzes or looks at the situation, or someone who's in the opposite direction, constantly way too critical.
See, I think you should always go into being too critical. Just remove the emotion from it. Like, if you are factually critical, I've got no problem at all you doing it as much as you want to do it. After every interaction with my old boss, where things didn't go perfectly, he would say, what could you have done differently? And I'm talking like people quit because their partner moved. I'm like, and he'd say, what could you have done differently? I'm like, are you being serious? Like, this was totally outside of my control. And when I actually said that to him once, he went, okay, fair enough. I'm like, what? And he was like, well, if you say it's outside of your control and you've thought about it, then I'm okay with it. All I'm asking is that in every single instance that doesn't go our way, that you stop and think and say, could I have done that better?
Yeah. So for me, listening to both sides of your conversation, a number of things. First, I think whatever topic we're discussing, we need to really remember that we all have intuition, and we should really, really always tap into that, because that's where your truth comes from. If you're really tapping into your intuition, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's through finances, anything else, our intuition takes you to your higher self, which allows you to be able to create and recreate the different things that you're putting out there. Now, Pete, you used the word, you know, I screwed this up. With some people, that language insinuates something completely different. I, for example, just go, exactly what you said. What could you have done differently? Start again. What could you have done differently? Start again until you get it right. Just keep on starting again. It's like, you've got this. Keep it. It doesn't mean it was bad. It just was, whatever you created just didn't work then. How many times have we gone into a stack of what we've created 5 years down the line and gone, oh my God, this is really useful. You know, this is really, now is the time to actually launch this, for example, and stuff. It's like, it's never completely crap. It's just not useful for that time. Also, going back to what your boss said, what could you have done differently? I completely agree, because one thing, and also going to women who continues to go into relationships, and we could use that for anything, keep on getting back into the same situation. We are what we create. And again, some people may go, what, that, you know, what do you mean that I deliberately chose to be in that situation? No, but if you are that unconscious about your pattern, and again, it comes down to education, which is why we're here, right? We're learning, and also we're providing that education for people, is that if you tap into exactly what you would love, and also what you believe you deserve, and also come from a place of your higher self, you would then be able to spot the pattern where you attract that sort of individual. And it may not be that they're the bad person. It could be that it's a need from yourself that you're trying to satisfy, and they provide that need initially. So if you go through studies, they'll say an abuser doesn't become an abuser straight away and stuff. It's like they normally present themselves as the knight in shining armor, and then they start to gradually start eating away at you, and before you know it, you're stuck in this relationship that you didn't even realize was abusive, right? And stuff. So those women, for example, and I've had friends who've got into that situation, and the story's all the same. Oh, they were really lovely initially. Oh, they took me out, they did this. And it's because when they were growing up, for example, they never had that sort of attention. So they seek it, and the praise notice it. So then they end up being in this bizarre situation. So it's, again, for me, I hear everything that you're saying, and I completely commend it. But we really, really need to start using the tools that we have within us, as well as learning new tools from other people. We have so much intuition. We know, we have that gut feeling. We know when something's right and when it's not. And we need to stop trying to override that gut feeling by what seems to serve us right now.
Completely agree with you. I think you live here.
Yeah.
And you use this.
Right.
Right. And I think you've put it in a lot more eloquently than I did. But that's, to me, I one of the things I rail against is when people say, oh, it's a really tough choice, really tough decision. No, it's not. You know the answer. Now, there's a truism in there, which is the output of that decision might be really, really hard to do. But one of the things that I've understood for decades, and I still don't think people get it, is your ears hear your words.
Amen.
Right. When you put it out there, your brain hears it. So if you say this is a really tough choice, well, guess what? It becomes a really tough choice.
Yeah.
Listen to yourself and go, this is not cool. I don't like this person, this place, this environment, this job. And then, that's the second bit that I was then referring to, then send that up and say, hey, the most powerful computer we have ever known in the whole of mankind, please think about this for me. Why? Like, the answer to my boss was, when I said there's nothing, I actually came back to him 2 days later and went, you know what? I need to make more time for my employees and like go for lunch and breakfast with them every so often and go for a coffee. Because the one thing I could have done differently in this scenario is I could have been aware of it in advance. Like the fact that it got jumped on me that his partner was looking for a job where they'd have to move. If I'd gone and had like lunch with them and said, hey, everything okay? Just want to check in, give you an environment where we can have a conversation that isn't all work, work, work. I'm absolutely convinced that in 7 times out of 10, I would have found out more than I could have then used.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, I'm like, yeah, I'm learning. And he just drilled that into me on every single thing that didn't go exactly as we wanted it. What could you have done better? And not make that an emotional response. Right? It's not, it's just, if you want to be a better person tomorrow than you were yesterday, consider your actions, consider your thoughts, consider your words, and go, was that totally cool? Like, give you an example. Before this call, I was speaking to JJ and we were talking through something, and Jessica came on, and I then said, yes, what we're planning is this, this, and this. Jessica didn't react the way I expected. And since then I've gone, that was totally the wrong way to address that with her. She doesn't have a relationship with JJ. I put her in a position of 3. She walked into a room where 2 people had already agreed, so she's naturally going to be more defensive of her position than otherwise. I didn't have just a one-on-one conversation with her. I didn't explain the reasons behind what I'd done. I didn't explain the reflection time I'd taken. I didn't relink it back to my mission and vision of what I'm trying to achieve. And I got the wrong response. So what do I need to learn from that? I need to learn from that if I want to bring people on the journey, I have to respect everybody's individuality, and I have to reach out to people on a one-on-one basis and go, listen, this is why I've done this. This is why I'm doing this. This is what it means. This is what I think we can get from it. You know, I know you might have some reservations. I'd like to hear anything specific, but I really hope that you can trust me and my leadership and we can go there. And then people go, yeah, I'm on board.
Oh my goodness. Oh, this is so beautiful. I actually thought you guys were brainstorming and it wasn't actually a decision that was made yet.
No, I know
Not
what
funny?
we need to do because I've been thinking about it for 3 days. See? And again,
That
did
is
I just do something wrong then? Yes, I just did it wrong again. Right?
no. Like now I get it. Like, oh my goodness. I didn't know that that's what was happening.
And this is an example of me being critical about myself without ego or emotion.
And now an example of that would have been for me to ask the question before starting talking.
This is, and then what you can do is just take that away from that and go, okay, that's a learning. And again, no ego or emotion, you're going to screw it up again. Because we're human. We are set, these models that we have are so ingrained in us that trying to escape from them takes hundreds of iterations before the model actually moves. You can't just go boom and that's it, you're a new person. It doesn't work that way. But if you go down the well of, oh, I really screwed that up, oh, I don't deserve this position of respect that people have given me, what kind of leader am I anyway? You're done. You're done. You end up in that well and you're done. Whereas if you can just go, okay, critically, what could I have done better? What am I proud of? What did I do well in it as well? What did I do wrong? Okay, let's move on. And I think you can apply that to anything, but absolutely, Victoria, I totally agree with you. Stick, your gut knows. Stick to that, because that is the thing that drives you, your spirit, and your soul through life. But then use your brain. Like when I see these tweets and stuff that says, silence your thoughts. No, don't silence your thoughts. You don't, if you need a screwdriver, don't put a screwdriver down, pick up the screwdriver. It's a tool. Just don't be led by them. Absolutely. Yeah. Be led by your heart and your soul and your spirit, but don't silence your thoughts. It's an amazing tool if you just use it as a non-ego, non-emotion tool. I have to end this conversation now because I've got to go and eat dinner. And spend time with my kids.
What are you eating?
I don't know. Liz has been cooking whilst we've been talking.
Is this all good? Say yes.
I think it's Sunday. It would be amazing. I think it's Sunday, so I think it's always funny. It's like when Dad's cooking, it's like beans on toast with cheese on top or whatever I can find in the freezer. When Liz is cooking, it's going to be like roast this with this. And
can you smell it? Can you smell it from where you are?
Sorry?
Can you smell it?
No, I'm in my office, which is like a converted garage. So I'm actually
separate.
Yeah, separate from the house. I don't know if I could do it if I wasn't, like, I get to leave the house. Like people that work from home, like truly work from home, like I was like,
no, you need to go hunt. You need to go hunt. Like you're saying, you're a very manly man. Like that's what it is. Like you need to leave the cave and you need to go hunt. If you don't go hunting, like us cave women, we can stay in the cave. Like I'm such a gatherer. I can stay. I'm good. Like a whole week at home, like this work and stuff. Good. But I also, I'm a gatherer. I need to go shopping. So the fact that I'm not going shopping and gathering and then connecting like with my girlfriends and going like to a cafe and that's like, oh, I'm gonna die. And for Hunter, it's like they need to go out and actually do big projects. Like, don't get them to pick up the socks and stuff. Tell them to fix the roof, right?
Yeah.
It's like you need to go hunt.
Yeah, that's a great conversation. Liz, I was like, Liz, we wanted to get the bathroom remodeled. We've got all the stuff to get the bathroom remodeled. I think we should redo the bathroom. She's like, we don't know how to do that. I'm like, it's just a set of YouTube videos. I mean, come on, how hard can it be? Right? And she's like, yeah, but let's start with X, Y, Z. And it's a small thing. And I'm like, I'm not interested in that.
Oh my God, Allison just did a podcast about it. It's hilarious. It's exactly the hunting and the gather. The hunting, you want to give them the big objects, the big projects, and the little ones, we're going to do that. Like we as gatherers, well, and it'll fulfill us. It'll build our estrogen, our happy hormone. And they build they spend their testosterone in building the big things. Anyways, I know you have to go to dinner.
Thank you all so much. We're going to actually cut this to crazy to get bits out of it, but there's some amazing bits in it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
It was good.
I'd love to like have a moment when you have the chance. Maybe tomorrow we can get on a call and chat, and I'd love to see hear about this 2.0 and
I will explain 2.0.
how we're moving
Everybody is better served from 2.0
Okay, I love
Perfect.
All right, see you soon.
Lovely.
I'll reach out to you as well.
Good luck, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.